listening to the SMD Radio Podcast, your gateway to the world of NVH testing, quality control, and everything in between. In today's episode, we delve into the intricacies of a Signalysis project. Join us as we sit down with Phil Wilkin, the R&D manager at Signalysis, to unravel the layers of common project processes and explore what a typical engagement with Signalysis looks like. Plus, we'll touch on the fascinating topic of SigQC, Signalysis cutting-edge software. Whether you're an industry insider or simply curious, this episode promises insights and intrigue.
So the implementation, let's talk a little bit about that. What all does that entail, and to what extent is your involvement with these things?
So SigQC software, it's our primary software, been written over the last, 25 years. I forget how many man years of work there's been in the software, and it's kind of like a Microsoft Word is, where there's so many features, but the typical user will only use a small portion of the features. Kind of like, there's all the cool envelope stuff and the mail merging and things like that most people never use in Word. Same kind of thing with SigQC. There's just a lot of different features. And so we don't expect our customers to have to learn all that and figure out which pieces they need. That's our job. So when we're doing an implementation for a SigQC system, we're working back and forth with the customer and understand, how that particular production line is going to run, what are the particular, faults or concerns that they're worried about, and so we pull all that information together and we set up SigQC. So SigQC can be used pretty much out of the box for any production line situation we've run into. We've used it for seats, we've used it for sunroofs, dental tools, bone saws. It's just across the board. It's the same product, just configured differently for each setup. So there's a lot of work for us to do to get that set up for a customer so that it meets their specific needs on the production line.
So before that takes place, what typically would you require from a customer so that you can kind of hit the ground running with the implementation? Or are there some things that a customer might need to give you in advance?
It depends on what part of the work we've got. If we're just supplying the software and our specialty in noise and vibration, then we're going to need to be working with an integrator who's actually building the test stand. So there's a lot of communication that needs to go back and forth with them to be able to get a system that's going to run smoothly and have designated pretty clear demarcation points of where the integrator's responsibilities go and our responsibilities go, and then working with the customer to understand their product. We need to, most of the specs that we get needs to be under 50 decibels and no objectionable noises. That's a pretty broad category. So we start working with the customers pretty early on to try and understand what they think maybe their product's possibility for objectionable noises might be, and start building, and a lot of times that'll lead to even doing some upfront testing where they'll send us products, and so as part of the implementation we'll actually in our lab be able to run those products, take data, start doing some of the analysis. And so in the end we'll end up with a lot of general metrics that'll catch some typical things that we've seen throughout our 25-year history of this work, but then also some pretty specific metrics for the product that we're working on.
Phil, what's a typical engagement look like as far as the steps go?
So upfront engineering, talking to the integrators, talking to the customer, learning about the product. So all that engineering work. Sometimes there's if we're building the test stand, there'll be a runoff at our plant. So they'll bring us, small assortment of products. We'll run them off here, start producing reports, et cetera. During that time, we're doing a lot of debugging on our system, or if this is being done at the integrator site, we'll be on the integrator site for a couple days working with them to establish all the communications back and forth, and debug any issues with that kind of stuff. And then once the system, sometimes they'll do a run at rate or a big lot test at the integrators or at our site, but a lot of times those are done at the customer site once it's finally installed. And so Signalysis will work through all those kind of tests, produce data, produce reports, et cetera, during those phases as well.
Speaking of the implementation process, I understand that this probably is a difficult question to answer, but just sort of a ballpark. How long from start to finish might that take typically?
Depends on what we're testing and the customer schedules, especially with the integrators. If this is getting integrated in an entire production line, we might be contacted up front, start some of the implementation at the beginning, but kind of have to wait for the integrator to get the bulk of the production line produced. If it's a standalone test stand and they've hired SigQC to do the test stand as well, then yeah, it's the COVID years put a big thing in the supply chain, so it depends on certain parts that you need, et cetera, like that. But the actual work to get the implementation done, all the back and forth with communications, it could be, a month of man time to physically get all that work done.
And that concludes today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at a typical Signalysis engagement. For more information or inquiries, visit www.signalysis.com. Thanks for tuning in to the SMD Radio Podcast, and until next time, stay curious.